Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode we'll be featuring the Tier 6 American cruiser known as the Cleveland, in a Tier 7 domination game on the map Fault Line. We are not sailing alone today but joined by our good friend Z, who is in his Tier 6 German battleship known as the Bayern. The focus of today's gameplay is going to be on our thoughts on the Cleveland so far, and also a small demonstration of some synergy between Z and myself, whereby we're going to work together towards the start of the game, go our separate ways in the middle of the game, and then come back together for a grand finale, but more on that later. We started off in the northeastern corner of the map, just north of the C objective, the one that occupies the region known as Destroyer Alley, or at least I believe that's the nickname given to the region, the valley on the eastern edge of the map, which is usually loitered by destroyers, and they send their torpedoes down there to try and knock each other out, take the objective, and try to knock out battleships and cruisers who venture too far forward. But we've got no destroyers in front of us, or at least none have spawned in front of us. They've all spawned in the northern or northwestern sectors of the map, and we don't have any time to waste. So I'm going to act as the destroyer, if you will, and Z's going to act as the close range cruiser support. Sounds a little bit odd, but it's going to work, I promise you. So what are our thoughts on the Cleveland then? Well, let's talk a little bit about the ship's characteristics. She's an interesting ship. She is a light cruiser, one must always remember that. So as a result, she can feel rather powerful given her characteristics. Let's talk about her speed. She has a top speed of 32.5 knots, meaning she can rush about the battlefield and chase down enemy destroyers quite nicely. If they venture too far forward into her gun range, i.e. get within say 6 kilometers of her, she can chase the destroyers and make them feel the pain before they finally get away. Her rudder shift time is 5.8 seconds, allowing her to dodge torpedoes and manoeuvre out of the way of incoming fire at longer ranges quite nicely. And on top of this, she has a turn circle of 660 meters, meaning that she's able to come about fast on targets. If we move on to the durability of the ship, she has a maximum health pool of 35,200 HP when fully upgraded, and on top of that her armour profile is quite nice, having a minimum of 13mm of armour and a maximum of 127mm of armour. And if you're wondering why we're kicking up our fighter plane at this point, we're using it as reconnaissance now that C is being captured most likely by an enemy destroyer, and we want to make sure the destroyer is not hiding in between the two land masses off to our starboard side. We can see a smoke screen ahead of us as Z takes some fire from the enemy destroyer. It appears to be most likely the enemy Mayhem going by the speed at which they are able to reload and fire off another salvo, and we're now expecting torpedoes to come towards us. On top of this, what's really nice is the fact that destroyer does not know we are here. All it knows is that Z's here, off to our port side at the moment, and on top of that we've also got a friendly cruiser a little bit further back, I believe it's a Nuremberg, firing in some long range fire. We're going to take the enemy destroyer by surprise shortly. Coming back to the armour, what's nice about that 127mm of maximum armour on the Citadel is that makes the Citadel quite a tough nut to crack. Only at closer ranges, i.e. 7km or less, can you reliably penetrate it, and even in the case of the likes of the Russian destroyer the Ognovoy, with its armour piercing, it will struggle to hit the Citadel sometimes, even at closer ranges. Of course, battleships will rip the ship apart, whether it be on a broadside or alternatively bow on, as we'll see a bit later, but this means that the ship is actually quite a tough nut to break down. Coming on to the guns, which we're going to start to use now that we've seen the Mayhem, our primary battery consists of 4 triple 152mm turrets, 2 mounted towards the bow, 2 aftwards. We put in a number of shots there on the Mayhem doing 2000 damage, and our high explosive shells are quite nice, whereby they can do a maximum damage of 2200 HP. As we see the torpedoes come charging out to hit Z, he's going to take at least 1 if I remember correctly, but not too many more than that. And we make our way towards the Mayhem with a reload coming every 8 seconds, meaning that we can put out a lot of hurt as we take out the engine of the Mayhem, and then we open up our rearward batteries before opening up with our bow batteries once again, taking the Mayhem out of the game. They got to experience 4 minutes of the match and we wiped them out in collaboration with our teammates very quickly. This goes to show you that if a destroyer ventures too close to a Cleveland, they are really going to feel the pain. Taking C, we're starting to hit the reverse gear, because a little bit earlier on, if you remember correctly, we spotted an enemy Gnevny making its way eastwards of B. And the reason we're hitting the reverse gear is to cut it off in case it decides to come down the small valley which is now in front of us, i.e. the valley that comes in on the western approach to C. Thinking a little bit ahead of what the enemy destroyers may want to do, putting ourselves in the shoes of a destroyer and trying to think, what would I do in that situation? I'd try and get behind this small fleet of ships that have headed into sea to try and take it away from them just after they've captured it. As we go in reverse, Z is pushing forward and so is our Nuremberg, who's going to wonder why we're doing this, and we try to explain it in the chat. But regardless, as our plane takes some damage from the enemy battleship, the other thing to also note about this ship is that its guns, for their firepower in general and their ability to fire quite quickly, do have some drawbacks. They take 29 seconds to turn 180 degrees. This can feel like a lifetime, not on the level of a battleship or indeed Japanese cruisers, but you have to get used to this, and sometimes going into engagements where ships on both sides of you at close ranges is going to really cause you to struggle. We get a shot on the Gnevny here, only doing a small amount of damage with all of our batteries opening up, all 4 triple batteries, but still we knock out their steering and take off 2,100 health. So it was worthwhile, and this means that the Gnevny now is in a prime position to venture into the firing line of our friendly Nagato just north of them, and that's going to tear them apart. What about the armour-piercing shells on this ship? Well, the armour-piercing shells on this ship are quite nice as well. They will do a maximum damage upon Citadel 3,200 HP, and they can quite reliably go through the broadside armour of battleships and indeed the superstructures at distances out to approximately 8 kilometres without fear. We're switching to armour-piercing here, we're hopefully going to articulate that. However, one of the key offsets with regards to the guns on this ship is the fact that the muzzle velocity of the high explosive shells and the armour-piercing shells is not the same, as we take off 2,700 health there in a single salvo, and then we open up with some more high explosive to try and finish the Fuso off. We leave them on 143 health before they continue to repair and then lose health through fire, so we fire another high explosive salvo in. This will do the job. Kill number 2. So for your armour piercing, you have a muzzle velocity of 762 meters per second. Meanwhile, with your high explosive, that muzzle velocity is 812 meters per second. So you have to get used to the fact that when firing different types of shell, you're going to have to adjust your fire accordingly at longer ranges. But in general, the muzzle velocities are quite slow, meaning that when you do open fire on targets out to your maximum range of 14.6 kilometers, you're going to have to get used to providing the right amount of lead. It can really feel as though you're actually firing the 127mm batteries on the Tier 6 American destroyer, the Farragut, for comparison, which have a muzzle velocity regardless of shell 792 meters per second. So at longer ranges, i.e. 10 kilometers plus, getting a reliable number of hits on an enemy destroyer or an enemy cruiser can be quite difficult, but hitting battleships on the other hand can be quite enjoyable to watch, as your shells gradually make their way over to the target. And we should also point out that you have a 12% fire chance when using your high explosive, which is quite nice to have. Not Japanese level, but still you can set a good number of fires. We've already set 2 so far in this game. Now at this point, Z and I are going to split. Z is going to head southwards and essentially engage the enemy Molotov, a very dangerous Tier 6 Russian premium cruiser with Tier 9 guns essentially. Or at least when it was introduced the guns were that powerful. I believe they've been nerfed over the last couple of months. Meanwhile, I'm going to make my way in towards B, because we're really suffering in the northern hemisphere of the map. So as a result, I'm going to try and close down B and capture it for the team, and assist our Nagato on the way in. Our plane's returned, so we haven't got that for 3 minutes. And let's move on to something a little bit different about the ship. Let's talk about the secondaries. Now you have 6 twin 127mm batteries on the ship. They are the same type of gun as found on the Tier 7 premium American cruiser, the Atlanta. They have a reload as standard of 6 seconds, but we've reduced that to 5.4 seconds through having the basic firing training skill on our captain. Z right now is coming up behind the enemy Molotov, and we're just gradually sauntering our way towards B, not rushing in because the Nagato is overextended to the point whereby we cannot support them anymore, and we're trying to get ourselves ready to take on the enemy Bleacher-Visca. On top of that, with regards to the secondaries, their range is 5 kilometers and they have a 5% fire chance. They can do a maximum of 1,800 damage with a high explosive shell, and they have a muzzle velocity of 792 meters per second, i.e. the same muzzle velocity as the destroyer guns in American destroyers. The only other thing we have to consider with regards to our secondaries is the distribution, whereby we have 2 on each side of the ship, and on top of that we have 1 on the bow and 1 towards the aft. Meaning that you have a nice distribution, and on top of this, these secondaries are dual purpose. They are your most powerful anti-aircraft batteries as well, doing 100 damage per second and having a range in our configuration of 6 kilometers. As standard it's 5 kilometers, but we've got the upgrade which extends our anti-aircraft battery range by 20%. But moving away from the anti-aircraft batteries, let's talk a little bit more about the detectability of the ship, and this is one of the key weak points of the Cleveland, and we're experiencing it right now. This ship gets detected by sea at 12.9 kilometers with the camouflage that we have on, and by air this is 8.1 kilometers. This means that this ship is going to get spotted quite early on, and on top of that, unless you manage to creep the ship around a landmass, as we're trying to do right now, with the enemy Bleacher being behind the landmass in the centre of B, i.e. in front of us, you are going to get spotted towards your maximum range in open seas, meaning that you are going to be at a disadvantage because you have that lower muzzle velocity on your guns. By comparison, for example, if you're in a Nuremberg, the German Tier 6 cruiser, the high muzzle velocity and say its armour piercing or its high explosive will give it the edge at the longer distance engagement range, i.e. 10 kilometers plus. We're now being detected and we're going to assume that it's the Bleacher still spotting us. We're not sure where from, and the fact that we're not capturing the area right now, we're just sitting in there and neutralising the capture rate, means that the Bleacher is definitely here and they're coming out at close range, so they were not the first one spotting us. Now we've cut our speed significantly, we score a secondary hit as well, in fact 3 secondary hits, remembering that our secondary batteries are twin mounted, so as a result they've got a good chance of hitting. And we dodge the torpedoes that come in by cutting our speed and turning very tight, making the most of that 5.8 second rudder shift time as we pick up a secondary battery kill. 3 kills in the bag, and now we're capturing B. In the meantime, the enemy Molotov has taken some damage from Z's main batteries, but the Molotov has been allowed to continue to exist. We're coming around now, but making sure not to rush too much. We don't want to creep out in front of the Molotov and get ripped to pieces. We want to make sure we can take B. Well, it does appear as though the Molotov has beached, and actually they're so preoccupied firing at our friendly cruiser that we can get involved as we open up with some armour piercing very shortly. As we launch it off, we've already set a fire with our high explosive shells, just going to show that 12% fire chance coming in handy. And Z's opened up his armour piercing. Bye-bye, Molotov. So coming back together, Z's done his job of taking out that very dangerous enemy cruiser, and we're now finishing off capturing B. There's 3 of our ships left, i.e. myself, Z, and a friendly kamikaze all the way up in the northwestern corner of the map, harassing the enemy Arizona, going by the chat in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And the enemy team's got an Arizona and a Miyoko left. Now here we're going to see the rainbow shell arcs of the 152 main batteries working to our advantage. We can shoot over a high landmass onto the Arizona and harass them essentially without being detected, because our friendly destroyer's doing the job for us in the detection front. We pick up 4 hits, not doing very much damage for the time being, but we're trying to go for a fire. Z is coming up behind us now and we're starting to unite once more. Although we're in a bit of a tricky situation here because we have the Arizona and the Miyoko both converging towards us. We're being spotted, and my apologies, the destroyer on our team is a Mayhan, not a Kamikaze. We're being spotted here by the reconnaissance plane, and that goes to show the weak detectability of this ship once more. In fact, we're getting spotted technically in open seas here, and we're having to turn in towards the Arizona to try and dodge that armour piercing fire coming in from their main batteries. But we've overextended to the point now where we're being shot on 2 fronts, so we're going to try and keep our ship diagonal to both foes. But then common sense is going to tell us, look, if you do this, eventually you are going to get heavily citadeled by the Arizona. And here we are sitting broadside to the Arizona as they slam in some rounds only into our superstructure. We're very fortunate here to receive multiple over-penetrations from their guns. We have our armour piercing ready to citadel the Miyoko, who is coming close, i.e. less than 5 kilometers, and now we are turning bow on towards the Arizona to try and minimise the chances of us taking maximum damage. Z is firing into the Miyoko as well, providing supporting fire. We take a citadel right through the bow of the ship. This just goes to show that the ship can be citadeled quite nastily. And we open fire with all of our guns on the Miyoko, completely falling short. Well, that was embarrassing. Let's try again in very shortly. Attempt number 2. Ah, there we go. 3 citadels, 10,000 damage. Now let's finish them off as they focus their guns towards Z, and they're trying to turn them, but notice the slow rotation rate on those Japanese guns there coming into our favour, and we pick up another citadel hit to pick up our 4th kill. Now we're slightly angled towards this Arizona here with 8,500 health remaining, and we bounce a number of shells and the rest miss. Quite fortunate there, and it just goes to show that a little bit of angling with your bow in the Cleveland can bode well. We open up our armour piercing here. We want to do as much damage as possible as the Arizona opens up with their aft batteries. It seems as they took out an anti-aircraft battery on our ship, probably one of our primary batteries, i.e. one of the 127mm at the front. and we're picking up some nice damage on them with our armour piercing. We dare not turn our ship broadside for the time being, another 4,000 off there, and we're starting to pull back behind the landmass here. Oh goodness, that was a very nasty set of penetrations. No citadel, but we've only now got 241 health remaining. Ooh, that's not nice. As we pick up another set of hits for another 2,000 damage, as we gradually pull away, and our shells didn't exactly go into the most lightly armoured point of the enemy Arizona there. Yeah, we're wounded. Now Z at this point is closing up. Of course, what one has to expect is that as this is a light cruiser versus his battleship, he's nowhere near as manoeuvrable or as fast. So we did overextend, as we said earlier, and as a result, we have been trying to play this a little bit alone. Now we need to work together as a team to bring down this Arizona. The only problem is we really want that Kraken, because we've got 4 kills and it would wrap up this game really nicely. So we're just sitting here for the time being, because there's nothing we can really do. Our main hand is capturing A at the moment. Z is pressing towards the enemy Arizona. They seem to be exchanging shots with one another, armour piercing and some secondary fire as well wafting over. And we decide, right, we need to help Z out. He's going to hold up the Arizona as much as possible, because the Arizona and him, they're both at an angle which isn't the best. The Arizona's going to beach itself slightly broadside. Indeed, he does take some nasty damage. But the thing is, the Arizona's big batteries can make a mess of the Bayern, just as much as the Bayern can rip apart the Arizona through successive fire. So we're contemplating, do we load high explosive here and just try and burn them to death, or do we load armour piercing and try and catch them on that broadside? We're creeping forward very gradually, and the acceleration of the Cleveland isn't too bad. It can take a little while to go from a stationary position up to say half speed, but once the ship gets going, it's really gone. And we're just gradually contemplating what to do here. So we now switch to armour piercing and think, right, if Z can hold up the Arizona, and we're constantly communicating via TeamSpeak, if he can hold up the Arizona long enough and we can catch it on its broadside, we will rip it to pieces with our armour piercing. We're only just under 5 kilometres away. The Arizona's now down to just under 10,000 health. Let's do this. We're going to full speed, and we're coming out. We're just outside the secondary range of the Arizona, so we're safe. Here we go. First salvo away, all 4 main batteries out. We pick up a very nice 4,224 damage, and we score some secondary hits as well. I'm not doing any damage, trying to go for a fire. We open up our second battery, and there's the Kraken. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the post-game stats. A little bit of risky business at the end, but we pulled off the victory with our team. And for it, we received 331,712 silver credits, 7,519 experience, and on top of that, we picked up 2 achievements. The first one being the Close Quarters Expert for damaging and destroying an enemy ship, whereby the final direct damage must be caused by secondary battery guns, and we also picked up the Kraken Unleashed for destroying 5 or more enemy ships in a single battle. In terms of our battle performance, we dealt out a total of 62,224 damage, comprising of 135 main battery hits, 1 enemy aircraft shot down, 7 incapacitations, 5 enemy ships destroyed, 3 fires set, 4 citadels hit, 1 base captured, 1 assisted capture, and 12 secondary battery hits. Looking at the team scores, we can see that we came first on our team for base experience earned, picking up 2,179, 404 more than the second place on our team, which went to Z, whereby he picked up 1,775. We worked well together, and indeed it was a team effort between us and the ships that supported us down that eastern flank, and as we gradually turned around to make our way back into the centre, we both went our separate ways, whereby Z focused on dealing as much damage as possible with his armour piercing shells and soaking up fire with his overall health pool and armour, whilst trading every so often with secondary batteries as well, whilst we focused on being a little bit more forward, pushing into the central objective, i.e. B, and trying to close down smaller ships such as the enemy destroyer in the form of the Bleacher-Visca, and also getting in amongst the larger enemy ships such as the enemy Miyoko and the enemy Arizona, although perhaps we were a little bit over-aggressive. Looking at our detailed report, we have 2 items to note here. The first is in terms of our damage caused, whereby, in our main battery damage of 58,331, we can see that just over 60% of that damage was attributed to our armour-piercing shells, and just under 40% was attributed to our high explosive shells. This is a pretty even distribution in terms of damage caused. Usually you would expect it to lean more towards the armour-piercing shells if they're used effectively. Alternatively, if you decided just to fire high explosive all game, it would shift the other way. But this goes to show that you can use the 2 different shell types on the Cleveland to great effect, given the right circumstances, and despite their rather different characteristics. And on top of that, what's even more interesting is that we hit with approximately the same number of high explosive shells as we did armour piercing shells. Just going to highlight once more how nicely balanced the shells are, and they will work for given scenarios respectively. The other thing to note is in terms of our damage received, that grand total of 34,960. Retrospectively, we only took all that damage, or at least the majority of it, in the final third of the match. And this just goes to show that you should not get carried away with the Cleveland and think you're invulnerable in it. And we did indeed get carried away with it, especially in that final third of the match, thinking that we had all that health to spare, what could possibly go wrong? Well, it almost did, seeing as we finished the game on approximately 0.5% of our total health pool. And finally, coming on to our credits and XP, we can see that we walked away with, after deductions, 304,347 silver credits, and our captain picked up another skill point, which is going to take us a little bit closer towards advanced firing training. In conclusion then, whilst today we haven't had the chance to demonstrate the very powerful anti-aircraft capabilities of the Cleveland, and we will do so in another video in the future, so far I've found this light cruiser to be a very aggressive one, that prefers closer range engagements, i.e. 8 km distance or less, rather than longer ranges, where it's high detectability values, and on top of that its rather weak muzzle velocities at longer ranges, and its rather poor maximum range in general compared to its German and Russian counterparts will let it down. Better getting close, and you'll be able to rip apart your like-for-like counterparts, and on top of that, enemy destroyers very quickly. Although do be aware of the fact that due to the highly manoeuvrable and highly aggressive nature of the ship, not only in terms of its guns but also its top speed, this can lead you to very quickly feel overconfident in your ship's capabilities and indeed what you yourself can do. And that was articulated in the final third of today's game, where we very quickly went from a prominent position into an overextended one and lost all but the smallest percentage of our health. You have to be wary of that in the Cleveland, that sometimes this ship can lead you to have faith in the unconventional, and sometimes that's going to bite you back tenfold. And so I've been TX141, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and fair seas.